Hi, Drew. How are you? Um, I'm okay, I guess, but I'm gonna do your birthday tarot reading. Happy birthday again, by the way. Please excuse my appearance. The this is my I don't have anything to do until 7 o'clock tonight attire. Um, so yeah, it's not my best look, but what are you gonna do? It's also cold in here, so I've got the hood up. But anywho, so we're gonna just do today general reading. I think this is the same spread I've done with you before, which is the Celtic Cross, which I'm sure you know. I've already pulled your significator, the Prince of Cups, who is a Scorpio, basically Libra slash Scorpio type, um, astrologically anyway. Okay, and we're just gonna ask, I guess, what's up? What the most pressing issue is at the moment. You can skip ahead if you want through all this shuffling business. I shuffle a long time. I like to make sure that they're really nice and mixed up and whatnot. I'm so glad you were using that deck I bought you the other day. I think that's great. I really like that one. It's one of my all-time favorites. I do wish that the art was a little older, but that's okay. It's kind of hard to find stuff that's older than that that can work, you know, for many of these images. I've been sort of into a little bit the Marseille Tarot lately too. I don't know if you've ever seen that one, but that's sort of considered the granddaddy of most modern decks and sort of any occult decks particularly. It's an interesting one. Usually dates to about maybe 17th century France or so. Really interesting deck. Of course, the originals were 15th century Northern Italians, which is very interesting because that's undoubtedly how they got packed with so much Neoplatonic philosophy. You know, that's how they've transitioned so easily into, well, the occult era of the 19th century in Victorian England, of course, and France as well, you know. But also today with the dorky New Age movement, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I guess it has its purpose in some form or another. One more. Alright, let's see what we've got here. Okay. The Eight of Swords is covering you. The Devil is crossing you. Crowning you is the Five of Wands, and your root is the Three of Cups. In the past you have the Ten of Cups, and in the future you have the Knight of Wands. How you see yourself is as the Six of Wands. Your house or your environment is the Six of Cups. Your hopes and fears are the Ten of Swords, and the overall result is the Queen of Cups. Okay. And underlying everything, you have the Nine of Swords. Oh boy. Okay. Well, this is sort of a mixed bag. Uh, there's a lot of good stuff, and there's a lot of really dark stuff too, which is kind of interesting. I'm just gonna basically start at the beginning. Um, the overall situation, or that which is most, excuse me, directly affecting you, is the Eight of Swords, which is the sense of confusion. Um, you seem like undecided about something, about which direction to go in, and I think you are used to taking one specific path, or you are inclined to take the path that seems best to you, and you sort of don't want to entertain other options. You seem sort of mentally locked down, and that might be because, you know, there aren't a whole lot of choices in this situation, or it could be from your own obstinance. You are crossed by the devil, and I do sort of feel that you know, the devil is very much known, especially in this deck, for his inability to see a wide array of choices and options. You know, the devil is the type of person, or is an energy that really likes to focus on one thing and just do that one thing because that's all he knows how to do. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. There's an aspect of that that can be really positive. But there's an aspect of it as well that can be, as you can imagine, very negative. And it is, in this case, being depicted as a problem for you. Now, it could also be the influence of someone else who is being sort of stubborn, but I don't entirely get that sense. Now, what's interesting is that the basis of this is the Three of Cups, which is not usually, which wouldn't seem to be the basis for something like that. But the Three of Cups is a card that sort of seems like I feel like you've gotten back together with either members of your family. You've had some kind of reconnection. At least there are a lot of indicators of that. You know, you also have in your house or your environment, you have the Six of Cups, which sort of tells me that in this situation it's surrounded by a sort of nostalgic happiness, a kind of sweet happiness that's pretty innocent in a way. And the Six, being Scorpio, or rather being the Sun in Scorpio, can often have to do with fond memories of things like childhood or childhood friends, or just people from your past, positive influences from your past and whatnot. And the Three of Cups, for me, I tend to see it as a kind of card of not only celebration, which is as it's often understood, but as reunion and reconnection with people. And I do think that that comes from the Mercury in Cancer aspect of it. You know, Mercury being a psychopomp kind of figure. You know, it's talked about how, you know, the number 3 is associated with the Great Mother, and therefore associated with death. And having Mercury in Cancer, it's sort of attributed to the relationship between Mercury and Persephone in Hades, and this sort of desire to lead the souls out of darkness back into light, and the happiness of the reunion that comes with that. So that's a really long, tedious way of saying that it is a card of sort of reunion and celebration of things with other people and celebrating togetherness with other people. You also have in your past the Ten of Cups. All your water stuff is very positive here. It's some of your sword stuff that is not so hot, and some of your fire stuff is also not so hot. But in the past, as the Ten of Cups usually says, the Ten of Cups usually speaks to familial bonds, really, and the sort of long-term connections with people that have a lot of depth to them. There's sort of something that isn't quite entirely fulfilling anymore about them, but they are sort of a culmination in some ways of happiness, or the idea of happiness. So I just sort of get this sense that they're, I don't know, maybe other people, the other people that you have reconnected with are happy about the reconnection than you are. I sort of get the sense that you don't entirely know what to do with it, and you are focusing very much on your own success in a way, and you see yourself as having attained quite an amount of success through your own ambition, and that drive is what has gotten you through. And you're trying to apply it somehow, and I don't quite know how, to this situation here as well. And the thing is, you are bound to rock the boat. The crown you have, the Five of Wands, does indicate that the best possible outcome for this, or the outcome that is meant to happen, is some kind of conflict. That whatever issues are kind of brewing here, it's not necessarily a bad thing if they sort of erupt a little bit. I do see you as the instigator of them, though. It's more of a self-defense kind of thing, is what I'm getting. I don't know, it's a little unspecific just because there's so much water, and the focus is so much on collective happiness, and it isn't, I guess the problem is that it doesn't seem focused on your personal happiness, or your personal agenda. And you sort of want to remind people that your agenda is valid and important and has to be recognized, So again, some kind of conflict is not necessarily a bad thing. It might actually be healthy for you to express that. However, it does still sort of seem to suggest that that you might be acting a little stubborn here and a little difficult. It does say that your ambitions, your kind of your sense of self-importance here is kind of a problem. It is maybe getting in the way. But because I don't want to say that it's too much of a problem. I think it's just sort of saying that it might be beneficial to recognize the other side of things, and I guess at least entertain other options is sort of what I guess I'm trying to say. Because you do have that Eight of Swords covering you, which does again suggest that you are your thinking is sort of locked down, that you are sort of afraid to look at other options, or it's just it so clearly says that you have kind of a myopic approach to this, because it's just what you're used to doing, And I don't know, I think you could perhaps benefit from trying something different. Um, I'm not quite sure, honestly. Again, it's a little vague here. The immediate future is influenced by this this character here, the Knight of Wands, who, which does seem to say that there's going to be someone who has been kind of far away from you, that is either coming into your life or is visiting. And I don't know if this has to do with, the impending holidays or anything like that. But it is most likely a male figure, though it does not have to be. They are, either way, it is a character that is very spontaneous and also kind of has a large sense of self and is kind of a prideful person, and also is very, in some ways he's kind of pushy. He's about energizing things and getting things going, and I do sort of see you butting heads with this person. For whatever reason, I'm not quite sure, they're sort of going to want to push you in directions that you don't really want to go in. And again, that is the basis of this whole reading. Excuse me. And it is going to come probably as a bit of a shock to you. I think you're going to take it personally, because you are sort of in a wounded place here. The underlying card is the Nine of Swords, and the Nine of Swords is the Lord of Cruelty. It's sort of the card that sums up all the feelings of human guilt and sadness and anxiety, and feelings of powerlessness and bitterness and sort of all those awful things are summed up in this card. And that is at the basis of all this. All of this happiness that seems to be part of this situation is sort of a veneer upon this much darker aspect of things that I don't know if either they don't want to look at it or you don't want to look at it. It's sort of confusing who doesn't want to look at what here. And it does probably have to do with some large change in something, some kind of almost cataclysmic, but not necessarily in a bad way, sort of in a natural way. Just this large shift in your lives. It's a massive shift that hasn't just affected you. It's a shift that has affected a lot of other people too. And it may have to do with leadership of some kind. Someone who is in a position of power, and it could be the Knight of Wands, who is sort of pushy. And I guess the thing is, you're going to have to work with this person whether you like it or not. That's sort of what I get here. So this might not be a familial-based question. It could be both. It could be both an issue involving family and work. Tarot readings are so strange in that they really break down our lives and kind of show us that what we think to be separate situations is really the same overall situation that is coming from us somewhere and somehow. So it can be very helpful to sort of see how this is reflecting itself in different aspects. Your hopes and fears, just to keep things moving here, is characterized by the Ten of Swords. And you sort of, you're afraid that this is going to be very destructive. This change, perhaps this change in leadership that you're worried about, you're afraid that it could be very bad for you. that it could end in destruction, really. Either if it is career related, that it could end in your being let go or something in some fashion, or abandoned. The Ten of Swords always represents destruction in some capacity. It is the Lord of Ruin, and it does represent sort of anarchy in a way, and in other senses giving up finally and quitting, sort of being unable to fight back anymore, and kind of giving in. The good thing about the Ten of Swords is that there is always a seed of possibilities still left after all the destruction that happens, but it is something you're afraid of, and maybe that's what the issue is here, is that you are just trying to cover your own behind, so to speak. But at the same time, you very much want to make known the fact that you know what you're doing, and that you don't need to be pushed around or steered into new directions. You don't want that. You don't need it. You don't want it. And on one hand, it is sort of saying that, again, just to reiterate, I just keep coming back to it, I know, but on one hand, it might be not a bad thing for you to try different things or try some of the suggestions that this person may be suggesting or will suggest, but I do also think that you are naturally just not going to get along with this person. And I think that that's sort of what it's saying here, is that whatever change in leadership is happening, you are naturally going to butt heads, and you could conceivably let that become a productive thing. The competition that exists between you could conceivably be a healthy thing for the organization as a whole, or you could just let it become sort of a greater source of anxiety and a greater source of negative gook in your lives. And that's essentially all I see in the bottom. The overall result is very interesting. You have the Queen of Cups as your overall result, and that's incredibly ambiguous, as the Queen of Cups herself is ambiguous. So I want to draw two more for her to sort of elaborate on her. And she came with the Eight of Pentacles now, or the Eight of Discs, and the Seven of Swords, which is kind of interesting. It can say that there is someone who you are probably fairly close to because you're kind of similar to her, who usually doesn't have much of an overt opinion on these things, who is kind of, I don't want to say a background person, but she doesn't often really express what she's saying because she sort of wants to keep on everyone's good side. And she's also just a very empathetic and compassionate person, and so she doesn't like confrontation. She has to do with how this all turns out, and also the direction that she decides to take things in, particularly involving, perhaps involving resources and how they're dealt with, and the conservation of resources. However, I don't know. I mean, there is sort of this feeling on her part that she will not be able to really fulfill what she set out to do. She's going to feel too much pressure and isn't going to really have the energy to keep going. She's going to let herself kind of be defeated there, even though what she's doing or will be doing is probably the right thing. Now, this could also represent an aspect of you, or it could represent, it's sort of an and/or kind of thing. It could represent you in some capacity as well, becoming, if you continue to take this path of sort of not really speaking, sort of not being sure whether or not you should speak your mind. If you continue to play this passive role, you will probably stay on good terms, but you will sort of still have this. It will sort of feel unfinished, to you. Like just it won't feel right to not speak what's on your mind, and I don't know. It just sort of makes you enter a more conservative path, and you won't feel like you have the wherewithal to fight against that anymore. So it is a little confusing. I'm not really sure, because of course I don't know the situation, and as you know, I am not Miss Cleo by any stretch of the imagination. But it is possible that there will be, or is currently, a woman that is involved in this. Physically, she may or may not be of sort of fair complexion with chestnut brown hair, probably an older woman, and personality-wise, she is very self-reflective, very compassionate and warm, but sort of superfluous or superficial in the sense that she kind of is, I don't want to say shallow, but I sort of do, because she can be. But she's just, she allows herself to fade into the background. Her personality is not overt, and it comes across as kind of shallow because she's water of water, and it's sort of like everything you look at is reflected back at you. She reflects back whatever you want to see in her. So she can sometimes be like a yes woman, or yes person in general. And she is very passive, incredibly passive, and very receptive. So I'm not quite sure. This is tricky. This is very tricky. But I think that the overall advice that I can give you is that, confrontation with this change in leadership is kind of inevitable, and again, is not necessarily a bad thing. But it doesn't have to be so angsty or emotion-filled. You can sort of, I think what it's saying is that the best way to deal with this is to sort of let the competition here just happen, especially since the Knight of Wands will probably give up after a while. The Knight of Wands is not the type of person to, of course, again, the Knight of Wands representing whoever is kind of coming in and trying to take over the situation. He's not the type of person who has a lot of stamina. He sort of tries to give a big push at first, and usually does not have the stamina to keep going with it. He usually peters out fairly quickly. So that is something to consider. His influence is very transitory. He will probably sort of just fade into the background. And you know what? He might even be the Queen of Wands in some aspect. I don't know if who this change in leadership is, whether it is a male or female. Again, it's sort of ambiguous, especially since knights, especially being so transitory, tend to represent just forces, and they don't necessarily represent the gender or the personality specifically of the person they're supposed to represent. But I do think that either way that this is sort of like a foreign influence, just someone who is coming from the outside and trying to exert their influence. And I think eventually, it could be seen that they become the Queen of Cups type of personality, where they sort of just fade into the background a little bit more and focus more on just making sure things run properly, having seen that they are no match for the forces that are already in place. That they can't really rock the boat too much, So I really hope that this makes sense. It's a little strange, given the nature of all these cups things, I sort of don't quite know how to tie the two together, because I've clearly taken this in a very specific direction involving career, it would seem anyway. But there is all this sort of like reunion stuff going on around this, and I'm not sure how to tie the two together. I mean, it could be that you have, reconnected with people that you used to work with, and I don't know, that this has kind of rekindled your sense of purpose or your sense of pride in your accomplishments or anything like that. It's sort of like, I don't know, I almost want to say it's almost like your family is being disrupted, or your close friend circle is being disrupted, and I don't know if this has to do with, shifting in management at Vassar. I have no idea. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I would like to think that things are kind of staying pretty stable over there, but I realize that is not going to always be the case. But I do sort of feel like, especially with the Ten of Cups, the past, your focus in the past has been on this kind of community and this communal unit, and that you have a long-term, sincere and very pure connection with. You really love these people, and so to see it be disrupted in any way is kind of seen as an affront to all sorts of things. And you are sort of having to welcome in this new person. That's what I get, anyway. And you're worried about it. You're really stressed about it, actually. Especially because you are such an idealist, and you have such creative ideas, and you want the freedom to be able to exercise them. And I think you're concerned that in working with this person, they are not going to necessarily want to cater to your imagination and to your big ideas, that make you who you are, that you can make happen, So it's not an easy situation. There's a lot of diplomacy, I think, that you have to deal with. However, again, diplomacy is not necessarily going to work either. I think just be patient. I would not necessarily try pushing things yourself. I would sort of let whatever competition is going to happen, or whatever conflicts are going to happen, let them happen naturally, because they will happen. Because I do, again, I sort of sense that this person is not going to be pushing that long. It will be very hard, his pushing at first, or her pushing at first, but it will probably eventually fade out. Okay? Oh, boy. Right. So I hope that made all, some sense and whatnot, and that you can at least get something out of that. And if you have any questions, or if it didn't make any sense at all, let me know, and I'm happy to do it again for you. So, but anywho, so I guess while I have you here, and since you asked, I might as well tell you what I've been up to. It has not been, it's been a lot, and it hasn't felt like a lot. I still can't seem to find a full-time job that I would want to do, frankly. I am working 3 different music jobs right now, which is good, all of them choral conducting. I'm doing, well, I'm actually at my old high school running the show choir there, and that I used to be a part of, that I was dance captain of back in the day. It's really depressing to go back there, because it is not the program that I was a part of. They have gone through 3 different director changes in 5 years, and none of them have been all that great, and the kids haven't particularly loved any of them. They just got a new one, and he's okay. He went to Ithaca, and he worked with possibly one of the worst choral conductors I've ever had the displeasure of working with. I don't know if you've ever heard of a Dr. Dobler from Ithaca. Not a great conductor. I had him for a district festival back in high school, and it was just, he was atrocious. He couldn't get us to do anything. That was the one time I ever had a bad district experience. Usually they got people that were really competent, and not this guy. So I'm a little concerned about that, especially since, you know, I can't work with these kids outside of the extracurricular thing that I do, and they are incredibly limited. They need at least 2 to 3 years of basic vocal pedagogy and basic ear training in order to be able to do what they need to be able to do if they're going to compete well. They also can't dance, which is the other half of the equation, so it's been really special. Our show is cool. I arranged all the music for it with our pit band director, so I wrote all the vocal parts for it, which was really fun. And people seem to like my arrangements. They think they're a little too hard, which is becoming true, but you know me, and I'm like you. I want to do it the way that I want to do it, and that's it, because I prefer the big idea than to the sort of stupid, not as exciting, simple idea. But we all have to try to make it work now, don't we? Anywho, so our show is about sirens and sailors. So it's a story of these sailors who get stranded and are tempted by these sirens and are eventually cannibalized by them. Of course, there is no happy ending in show choir. At least in the show choir that I like to do. Well, at least in this kind of show. I don't know. I mean, because there are, of course I say that, and there are tons of happy endings in show choir. It's all about happy endings, practically. It's so schmaltzy. So it's nice to have a show that is dark. But it'll be what it'll be. You know, they're getting there. It's tough because we haven't had a rehearsal in 2 weeks because of various things, concerts that they've had and the hurricane. So I'm not happy. But it's really hard. You know, the kids like me, if anything, if that's any consolation to me. And the administration seems to like what I've done. The only other thing is that I have to work with a co-director who I was in this group with, you know, again, back in the day. And he's my visual guy. And it really sort of just pisses me off, frankly, because he does not have any real instructing experience. He's not a good instructor. He's actually borderline terrible. And he is the nicest kid in the world. I love this guy. And, you know, we get along really well. And he does so much of the logistics stuff because he worked with him last year and sort of knows all the connections and knows how to do all this. And I mean, I really could not do this without him. So I'm incredibly grateful to David, but he is a bitch to rehearse with. It's awful, you know. Because he tries to clean choreography, and he just can't do it. You know, he either doesn't know how counts fall because he's not that musical. I'm like, how are you supposed to do choreography if you don't really have a great sense of rhythm? And he's just not a powerful presence. You know, I had to take over one day for him. I ran the visual stuff, and I had them looking pretty decent because I have experience with that, and he just can't seem to do it. So it's been really problematic, very frustrating, and very depressing. And we have 5 guys participating. When I was there, we had about 14 guys, you know, which is solid, and that's much better. You know, so we have about 25 kids and 5 guys, 20 girls. So as you can imagine, my balance issues are astronomical, especially since none of them, unfortunately, are Verdi tenors or anything like that. Most of them are tone deaf and can't remember how to sing the melody. So I have my work cut out for me if I want them to even get silvers this year, which is really, really bad, because the only way I'm going to build this program back up is by saying, you know, hey, we have something to show for it, and, you know, if you participate in this, you'll at least do well. So that's one thing. The other thing that I'm doing is my church choir. I just changed churches, thank God. I'm in Barrington, Rhode Island now instead of Taunton, Mass. and the church is a lot smaller, but at least the population is a lot more educated. So they're a little bit more open to things like chant and, you know, a more educational experience, I guess, because I do like to do that, especially in the poor Catholic Church, whose members are so devoid of any understanding or appreciation of their own historical heritage. It's really sad. But I have a choir of about 10 women, and it's kind of fun. It's, you know, I have some people that are very capable that have participated in community choirs or have taken private voice lessons, so like there's a lot more leeway there than I had in Taunton, where I had just about 15 Portuguese-speaking people who didn't want to do anything new and couldn't really speak English. That was fun. So it's nice that I can understand them and that we can communicate. That's kind of cool. Makes rehearsal a hell of a lot easier, and I think they're starting to like what I do, and parishioners really like what I do. So it's much better than Annunciation, where no one talked to me, no one said hello, no one really liked what I was doing. That was really depressing, and that place is a mess now, but we won't go there. And it's not because of me leaving. So there's that, which is very good. And as I was telling Jim, we did do Hildegard for the whole month of October, or at least I did. I taught them Caritas Abundat in Omnia because it was so short, and we did that the first weekend of October. I also taught them Santa Maria Estrella de Dia, which was kind of fun. They actually really liked it. Parishioners liked it too. But, you know, people didn't really get the Hildegard even though I told them about it at the start. And they were like, is that music Jewish or is it Muslim? It's like, it is neither. It was written by a 12th century Benedictine abbess who was just recently canonized, but I don't know, they at least thought, for the most part, many of them thought it was kind of cool, so that was nice. And then lastly, the best thing that I'm doing, sort of oddly enough, is this community choir in Taunton that does like pops music. It's like chorus light, and so I really don't love the music that we do, but the people are so nice. You know, it's about 100-person choir. It's sort of like 3 steps below Capella Festiva, but they actually do a pretty decent job. You know, they're not bad. I mean, they actually are pretty good. You know, it's about a 20-year-old organization, and this couple, Eric and Steven, sort of just put it together years ago, and I've stayed with it. So Eric is the director, and I'm the assistant director, and that's been going well. I mean, he's a good musician for the most part, but he doesn't really have a real choral directing background. You know, he never really studied it. He sort of just picked it up from participating in choirs and going to workshops and reading books and things like that, and I guess that's fine. But I mean, what he does in his technique that he uses is fine for this group. It works for this group. But it's a little anal. You know, he's very, very, very anal. I always thought Christine was super, super organized, and like, he even makes Christine look like unorganized. It's really bad. I mean, he literally blocks out 10 to 5 minute, or rather 5 to 10 minute chunks of time for each rehearsal. I mean, we only rehearse each song in chunks of 10 minutes. It's really weird. It took a long time to get used to it. But if anything, you know, when we're doing this much music in a season, it does make sure that you get kind of everything at least touched upon in a rehearsal, and it sort of allows everything to move at the same pace and peak at the same time. So there is a method to it, and it's actually not all that bad. I actually started using it with my church choir. You know, because it does prevent people from getting too bored with things if they don't like a piece, you know. The one thing that I don't like about it is that it doesn't really allow anyone to ask questions, and it doesn't allow, doesn't easily allow for real nitpicking, you know, and I love to nitpick, as you can imagine. And it's a lot harder to do detail work. I've tried very hard to do that, you know, but it's always like one or the other. You know, you've either got to pick, do I want to spend time plunking notes and rhythms, or do I want to do detail work? And, you know, it's tough to stick the two together sometimes when you've only got 5 to 10 minutes on a piece. So I don't know. I have a board meeting with them tonight. Fun, right? How I want to spend my Friday afternoon in Taunton at a board meeting that I won't really understand because I have no real choral financial experience. Hello, So I don't know. It's okay. I get paid peanuts for it, but it's at least fun, and the people are nice, and they really like what I do. They're very happy with my style, and they think I'm pretty good. So hey, and it's all just good experience for when I ever apply to grad school again, which is sort of just looming over my head. I don't know. I just can't quite seem to muster up the motivation to do it, which is really bad, I realize. But after I had such a bad experience with it last time, I don't know. And I didn't even try that hard. It's so bad. I just didn't have the time to try hard when I was a senior. But I don't know. I don't know. I've changed a lot, Drew. It's not necessarily for the good. I don't know. I'm very much lacking in courage lately. So we're, trying to build back up here. And, I don't know. I miss people so much. I miss Vassar so much still. I'm over a year out from graduating, and I still miss it every day. And I miss all of you guys very, very much. I miss all my teachers and all the instruction that you all gave us. I valued you all very much then, and I value you more now, especially since you are kind of still teaching me in a way, especially vocally. Gosh, I mean, my technique has changed a lot, and I'm sort of finally starting to figure out things that you or Jim tried to teach me and I just couldn't do for whatever reason. And it's made all the difference in the world. It's not a perfect thing yet, obviously, and I don't think it ever will be, but it's getting there. I feel a little bit better with my voice, and it can do things a little bit easier. I feel more like a tenor now than I ever used to. I mean, I hate being a tenor. I hate it sometimes more than I can possibly say, because it's just such a frustrating voice type. But especially, my voice, it just, I don't know, and maybe you can have some advice for me on this, but as you may or may not remember, but I am still cracking a lot. I feel like a pubescent boy sometimes. I'm like, I don't understand. I'm supporting, I'm not pushing, I'm sort of directing it to that space, and hooking it and creating enough space but not too much space. I'm like, I don't know what more I can possibly do to prevent cracking, and it just cracks. My head voice is starting to blend a lot more into my chest. I can sort of float high notes much easier than I ever could before. My falsetto is much more flexible, and I just have a lot more control over that. So I don't get it. I really don't get it. I don't know what to do about it. I'm going to ignore the phone because for the past 9 weeks, all we get is telemarketing for the election, and it's really starting to drive me crazy. I can't wait for the damn thing to be over. Anywho, so if you have any advice for me, I would really appreciate that. I don't know if it's something you need to hear or do in person, but I don't know. I'm sort of at my wit's end with it. I just don't know what to do about it. Drives me nuts. So I don't know, and it's not even necessarily when I'm singing in Tessitura or in Passaggio. It's just whenever or wherever. It's sort of just like mid-range up to anything. It's so frustrating. And I know that it has to be a sign that I'm doing something wrong, but I don't know what it is that I'm doing wrong. I don't know. I'm just voicing my frustration to you, because I know that you'll relate, and no one else around here really does. Anywho, so that's sort of it on my end. It's not really anything all that exciting. It's sort of both exciting and not really exciting. It's very frustrating to not have the time to do the music that I actually want to do. You know, I've tried to do it with my church choir in small increments, and that's certainly a challenge. But I don't know. I wanted to join this early music group that is in this area. That's directed by Paul Sinawa. I don't know if you've ever heard that name before. He works sometimes a lot in Boston. He has a group based in Fall River, of all places, that I really wanted to join, but they rehearse, I think, on Mondays, which is when my community choir, the SMFC, meets. So it was either do choral work and make some amount of money for it, or do, you know, this other thing that I probably would enjoy a whole lot more. But I don't know, at this point with loans, it's sort of difficult to choose the thing that I want to do over the thing that will make me even just an extra $150 each month. It makes a stupid amount of difference, but it's a difference nonetheless. I don't know. So I'm thinking I might get certified eventually to teach in high school, and then while I'm doing that, work on my master's and hopefully keep moving up slowly and slowly. Because I just can't do grad school, you know, with the financial situation I'm in. I'm still living with my parents. So it's, I don't know, it's not ideal. It really isn't. But anyway, I've talked enough about me. So I definitely want to know how you are and how Jim is and what's going on. And I'm really excited to see the MADS program when it gets webcast, and VCC too, and Women's Chorus, and I look forward to that all the time. Yeah, I don't know. I really miss doing that stuff very, very much. So please let me know how you are and how things are going and all that. I really like to hear from you guys. And I love that Jim posted that Hildegard article on my wall. That was really great. So wish him my best for me, please, as always. And I tried talking to Christine a little bit ago, but I know she's so busy that she didn't quite get back to me. She did, but it wasn't really. I was hoping to see how she was doing. So any dirt on how y'all are doing, because I miss you all very, very much, and I just wish you all the best. By all means, I'd love to hear it. All right. And again, if you have any questions about your reading, you know, please let me know, and I'm happy to answer them. All right. It was good doing this for you. Take care, and I look forward to hearing back from you. So stay well, and wish you the best. Bye.